this conversation is to discuss the Raven 1 Dominant Fury campaign, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the most recent collaboration that's been released between Kevin Miller and Baltic Dragon. And it's a prequel to the Raven 1 campaign that they had released previous to this. So I don't know that there's a real rigid format to this, but it's mainly just to ask questions and to provide feedback on your experiences with the campaign. So,
hey, Chris, if I may, I'll kick it off and thank you,
sure.
You and Virtual Carrier Strike Group 3 for hosting us. Also, Jello Aiello is the third Musketeer collaborator on the Raven 1 series of games, and he couldn't join us today, but yeah, it's a three-legged stool, and we obviously need all three legs.
Absolutely. Didn't mean to leave out Jello there.
Jello was the one to actually put us in touch with Kevin. I think it was his idea to make a campaign, DCS campaign out of the excellent novel. So we did Raven 1, and then we moved to Raven 1 Dominant Fury, going backwards in time. Now we're also working slowly on a third part, which will be between Dominant Fury and Raven 1. That will be more of a training campaign for the F-18. But yeah, that's going on pretty slowly. At the moment, it will kick up probably after the summer. It will move much faster.
And we have a working name for this campaign: Combat Wingman. Raven 1 Combat Wingman. Awesome. And we're I'd say we're about halfway through putting that together.
Yeah, and I mean we thought that it's not everyone plays scripted campaigns, especially from the multiplayer environment. But then when you have a training campaign written by two former pilots and giving you some background information or tips and tricks you never learn anywhere else, that might be also nice for people who fly multiplayer too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to start us off, I think everybody probably already knows who you guys are, but how about just a little brief introduction for those who may not know? Kevin, would you like to start?
Sure. Kevin Miller, 24-year naval aviator. I am the author of the Raven 1 trilogy and working with Baltic Dragon and Jello Aiello on the Raven 1 series of DCS games.
Okay. And
yeah,
BD?
Yeah, so my name is Wojciech. I'm Polish, and I'm living in Belgium, making campaigns for probably 8 years now or 9 years with DCS. So it's like a sidekick for me still. I'm working, my main job is completely different. I work in kind of in politics and European institutions here, but I'm planning in next year to leave all that behind and just move full-time to DCS and work only on that, because that's much more rewarding and nice than politics, definitely.
All right, thank you. So I guess I'll start us off. My first impressions with this campaign was just how realistic it felt. It felt like the world was alive, and it felt like you said, a single player campaign. It didn't feel like a single player experience. It felt like I was plopped right into the middle of the rich world of Raven 1. And I've read all three of the Flip Wilson books, and I just thought it did a really great job of making me feel like I was experiencing what I'd read, or in this case, something very akin to that same world, what I'd read before. I thought you guys did a phenomenal job with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was the whole idea, right, Kevin, to make it feel realistic. And also that was the most difficult part, I guess, for us.
We saw on social media, and Raven 1 came out in 2020, summer of 2020, and wow, we've never seen anything like this before. So we had, let's say, how can we top it? And we had a good conversation, and Jello brought this up. I said, okay, we're gonna do Dominant Fury, the Syria map, and Jello and I spent some time there in the Eastern Mediterranean, and yeah, we can have a lot of fun there. But are we going to be more kinetic with this campaign? And we felt, well, yes, we should, for the gameplay experience. But if we do that, then the Raven One book, has, Flip Wilson, and then, he has his experience there. But, but if he had already, years earlier had all these Silver Star and Navy Cross experiences in Dominant Fury, and we decided, no, we won't worry about that. The book's the book, and this is DCS, and we want to arm up, and that's why people get into DCS instead of Microsoft Flight Sim. So that was the rationale there.
I think it was a wise course of action.
Yeah. Kevin, was there anything that like you really wanted to do or really wanted to incorporate that just DCS couldn't handle or didn't do well? Were there kind of some frustrations there from the DCS side on what you can and can't do?
It's a great question, and I'm gonna let BD answer that here in a minute. But I'll say that Jello and I pushed BD, and we, the realism, the ship, and the first mission in Dominant Fury, and I'm not, I don't think there's going to be a spoiler here, but the first mission is a night bingo to an unfamiliar field, and that's a varsity mission certainly. And so we had custom voice comm in there, and I kind of built a little script, all these pretend airplanes and voiceovers for them, but BD put it together, and so that was tough. But BD, I'll let you answer the rest of that.
Thanks. I mean, I don't know how, probably do have some experience with the mission editor, and how it looked is I got the script from Kevin and Jello, and I'm like, okay, this we cannot do. Well, DCS aircraft AI is not capable of this and that and this, so we had to kind of adjust it. Then I looked, okay, this we might be able to do if we try to push some things to the limit. And then like mission one, where you have this trap and you have player at certain distance from the carrier with other flights going around. So the only way to have it work, I had to make the carrier static and put a lot of wind for landing, so it wouldn't move. That way I could really know where the player is all the time in relation to the carrier. And of course, if player is really suck at landing and trapping at night, then he would be probably off and things might not work as intended. But it's just a small example of what we had to do to get all those mission work as intended. And of course, DCS is DCS, and like there's always lots of bugs. With every update, there's something coming up that I have to fix or I cannot fix. But I think, yeah, we managed to have a very comprehensive campaign, but it's also super difficult to upkeep because of all the DCS bugs being introduced with every other update.
BD, I'm reminded of the Rescort mission, and I think that the script might have had MH-60 Sierra Seahawks in it, and you suggested, hey, look, we have our notional big deck amphib, and we can use a Huey helicopter, and that's going to work inside DCS. Yeah, that sounds great. Marines, that's a core mission of them, to go in and get it down to aviator, so it makes sense.
And I think one thing we struggled with, or I struggled with, is we always had this big strike, like Alpha Strike with 18 jets taking off from the carrier. And if you do some missions scripting the aircraft carrier, the super carrier, you know how completely unintuitive and stupid it is, how the aircraft spawn, how they go to cats, how you have no control over them. So it took hours upon hours to have them take off in the kind of as I want them, and then to have all the voiceovers played when they kind of pass the certain altitudes, etc. It was crazy, but it worked out. This is super flexible, but you have to be very patient with it.
Thing that did stand out to me is like just the first mission, that was like baptism by fire. You're going to find out whether you can fly this campaign or not in the first go, because you're going up running intercepts, then you're tanking, in bad weather, and coming in and doing a case 3 trap or divert, and that's just like, man, you're going to find out the skill level real quick.
I'm reminded of our Nugget aviator experience. You get qualled, and within 96 hours you're sent overseas and you join a ship, and probably the day after you join, you're going to fly a day and a night, and typically with a commanding officer. But on that night hop, if you can't get aboard for any number of reasons, you're going you're going to be bingoing to the beach, and you practice this in the simulator, and you brief it before you go. But yeah, doing it is something else.
And I think the story behind this was when we had the reviews of Raven 1, some of the people were complaining, but you have so many training hops and the real action starts from mission 5, it's so boring. So I said, okay, let's take a most boring, mundane mission you can and make it really interesting for the people. And that's how mission 1 came to being. Mission 2, which is completely different than everything else with the rescue operation.
Mission 2, and that's the yacht rescue. And
I enjoyed that one. Yeah.
And I want to give Baltic Dragon the credit for that script. He wrote it, and just a terrific, and one of the greatest lines in military aviation. Telling a woman to calm down. I mean, I was impressed.
I think every mission has its story, and it's with Dominion Fury was nice because we were much more free to do whatever we want. Because in Raven 1 we were following the book, and we had 4 or 5 missions that were described in the book, and we had to recreate them and then fill in the gaps in between them. Whereas here we could have just had the idea of the whole campaign and all the missions starting. I mean, nothing was really limiting us there apart from DCS limitations.
And with Raven 1, Baltic Dragon wrote that script from the book, and he sent Jello and I essentially a spreadsheet of the voice comm, and we would yes, let's change this. Yes, we do that. With Dominant Fury was obviously not a book, and so Jello and I wrote that, and I counted up the words to Dominant Fury, and this includes the briefings, and certainly all the voice comm, and it approaches the size of a novel, and we get feedback on the briefings, and I assure you, everyone, that's just just a small fraction of a real briefing, and all the comm that goes in there. It's kind of touch the high level stuff, and then just like mission 1, off you go.
I guess that begs the question: is that maybe fodder for a new novel?
Yeah, the new novel, it has been started. But yeah, Flip is going to be an admiral in this one, and maybe you've heard me talk about it over the years. We're going to start in the Mediterranean and North Atlantic, Baltic Dragon's neck of the woods, with who as the adversary. So we're going to that is in work.
Awesome.
If you could tell me, guys, because I haven't been flying multiplayer for a long time, almost ever. But so can you tell me a bit, or tell us a bit more about your group? Who's doing the missions for you? How it works? Are you following all the real life procedures when you fly? It's like a very realistic group or more relaxed? Sorry for the question. I haven't prepared myself. I was flying today, so.
Well, yeah, I'll speak on this part if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm more of the MilSim person, so I take it to where we're actually teaching ATC procedures and going into the actual comms. We actually have some pilots that actually do fly in real life, and we kind of lean on them to say how they actually do these procedures. How do they check into ATC? What range do we check in? Same with Warhawk down there, who actually does. He actually kind of started up the CATC program for our group as well. So me and my side, I like to take it as far as I can, because I know this fat bastard's not going to be able to fly in real life, but maybe, I kind of like this.
One of the other things that I'm kind of known for in this group is utilizing SAM systems within missions and trying to
Kill everybody.
just you. And trying to get like I'll set up missions with SAM traps. I'll set up when I set up the SAM sites themselves, I've done research on essentially Russian and then of course Soviet battle doctrine, and how they'll set them up, how many units will be in a particular SAM site. I take it very, for me, it's I'm in it for the realism, I like to say I stopped just short of calling people sir, because I don't do that anymore. I was in the Navy, I'm no longer there, so I don't do that anymore. But you know, we do take it, most of us do take it, you know, pretty seriously. I think we've got a fairly mixed group of people that, you know, some are just in it for the fun, but most of us, I think, are in it for the realism and the immersion.
Well, it's kind of a fine line we have to draw, because if we go all the way hardcore in procedures, then the number of people in the group that kind of fly and enjoy that is going to shrink a little bit. And then, you know, the flip side of that is if there's no structure and no procedures, then it's just super haphazard, and then people are not having fun because there's just a craziness. So there's this kind of balance of, you got to have enough structure and enough of the procedures followed to where, you know, people aren't tripping over each other or getting each other's way, and everybody kind of knows what's going on and what to do. And then you kind of got to balance that with, you know, some of us spend, you know, hours and hours and hours a week doing this, and then other people, you know, they'll show up a couple hours once a week and do it. So trying to keep that balance of having everybody where they can enjoy it is a challenge for us, for sure. And like I say, there's definitely some people that lean more toward, you know, let's make it as realistic as possible. And then there's some other people that's like, you know, I don't want to marshal for 45 minutes for the recovery window to open to land. So there's definitely some compromises you got to make in there, just for, you know, people's sanity sometimes.
I think it'd be a good example to talk through kind of what we're doing right now. So we're several months into a quote unquote deployment. So annually we do that. And so we have a group of guys that are on our mission development team, and they craft this scenario and then they run through it. And we have essentially a 24/7 deployment server it's updated manually by these guys. They take out the destroyed units. We have different wing wide missions where we'll get all the different squadrons together. We've got a Tomcat squadron, 3 Hornet squadrons, Hawkeye squadron now, and a squadron of Harriers. And so all of these things will be operating, you know, to their strengths and coordination in order to try to work towards whatever the campaign goals are. And so currently it's on the Caucasus map, and working through, I guess we went through Crimea, now we're getting into Georgia. But so, you know, it kind of gets tailored back and forth. I know that one of the things that we had early on was, you know, fighting DCS-isms. So, you know, as the Tomcat squadron, we're up there doing cap missions mostly. And, you know, we would have ace AI fighting against us that are going defensive on, you know, TWS shots, you know, so it was stuff like that. You know, we had to kind of constantly tweak things and fine tune them. But yeah, it's a really a rich experience. It's a phenomenal group to be a part of, 100%, and a great group of guys to fly with. But as far as, you know, realism goes, I think that we're in realism inspired, you know what I mean? So it's tailored. You know, we're not going to go zip lip on case one comms just because it would be chaos. And we don't have necessarily the same restrictions as real life or abilities in a lot of ways. And so, you know, we've got to be able to communicate and deconflict and things like that. But it's a great thing to experience when it's done well. And I think that personally, I think it's really inspirational how these guys spend so much of their free time learning these things and being so proficient at it, because it'll really surprise you and amaze you sometimes to see the capabilities that, you know, every one of these people has a job outside of, you know, this is like their hobby, what they're doing for fun, you know, and it's just like, man, it's shocking to see what they can do.
Yeah, I enjoy the realism light, I guess. For me, you know, finding DCS and being able to do this from home was like reliving a childhood dream. My naval aviation career got cut short in Pensacola when I ended up in the hospital and getting medical out. So yeah, now the ability to, fly a Hornet from my house, which was always my dream as a kid, and to fly a real one and run campaigns, like whether it's our campaign or the Raven One campaign. It's just, yeah, it's fantastic. I never in my life thought I'd get to do this kind of thing.
Do you all incorporate super carrier in your deployment?
We do, and
It's
it's the
required.
source of many of our bugs. Yeah, sometimes it's tough to get off the deck on the super carrier module at mission time.
Yeah, I think, and the whole DCS, the guy that came up with the whole super carrier logic is the person I hate most. Some kind of Russian guy. We had a discussion once, and I thought, look, dude, why can't you just have it that you can spawn an aircraft you want on the station you want, and it'll just, and then assign him a cat you want and tell where he should start and go. That would be so much easier than the system that you've done. Oh, no, but then we had problems with multiplayer and people would do stupid things. I just completely don't understand why it works like that. It's just crazy.
Yeah, we get a lot of the whole position bug when we're trying to get to the catapults. We've had problems, I think, before with Tomcats and Hornets on the same deck. AI aircraft sitting on the catapults and not doing anything. What's the other? Oh, the carrier goes into a turn and the airplane slides off the deck. It's just crazy.
Yeah, there's nothing like getting started up and aligned and waiting for your permission to taxi and then having somebody spawn in next to you and you explode.
Yeah, that's great too.
Yeah, or the Tomcat spraying the wings and hitting the aircraft around. So we had that problem with Raven One. No, it's I mean, with all the bugs, it's still an amazing thing. The super carrier adds so much to realism, and without it, I think the Raven One and Dominant Fury would not be the same.
Question.
Right.
Question.
The deck crew is really the thing I think that really sets it apart.
Yeah. Question for Kevin, not necessarily related to the campaign, but more just to life on the boat and operating on the boat. I think in at least one of the books, I was reading about guys being on, say, a case 3 approach and the ship turning to sweeten up the wind and things like that. That seems like it would be a real pain. How often do they do that to you?
All the time, and you can't blame them.
Yeah.
They want to put the wind down the angle, and so they're working hard to do that. Now they have standing orders from the captain, and it's particularly important at night. But inside a mile, don't turn. So okay, thank you. But here you are at 3 miles, 10 miles, and a turn of 5 degrees is going to whip that center line final bearing out there. And so, but you correct for it, and you just get used to it. It's not a big deal. It's just part of it being on the ship.
Yeah. Are they usually kind of small course adjustments like that, or are they ever
Typically?
Okay.
But the winds shift, and another the old saw, the carrier always finds the weather, and so but think about it. You have a thunderstorm and there's a downburst. So the thunderstorm is near you, and that downburst is gonna direct the wind that you're experiencing at the time. So you have to go into the wind, which is into the downburst, the storm.
Right.
BD talked about on the first mission in Dominant Fury, he had to make the ship stationary, and that's when there's 40 knots of wind down there. I mean, the ship will make 2 or 3 knots of bare steerage way. So you're in Marshall, and it's relatively easy to figure your timing in Marshall. But when there's no wind, then the ship has to make its own. So now the ship's moving at 25 knots or so, and so you have to watch that in Marshall, that you're not going in afterburner at 30 seconds. Not that I've ever done that with 3 seconds of push time to make your push. No, the guys on the bridge, the guys and gals on the bridge are doing the best they can. God bless them.
And they communicate that pretty well to you, or you just figure it out on your own?
Sometimes, yeah, you'll get a call. Yeah, I mean, and Marshall and the final controllers are very good about that. New final bearing is The LSO will come on sometime. Okay, ship's in a turn. Give you that little sugar call. But yeah, they're all, everyone involved is trying to help out.
Got a question on the very first mission, the intercept training. That all occurred kind of within the 50 nautical mile carrier control zone. Was that typical for you guys to do training inside of that? Because I mean, for us, we typically will try to get out of that and only be in that zone if we're coming to or leaving the boat.
You know, for a kind of a vanilla mission like that, let's say with a nugget, sure, you might rendezvous on, look, the 230 at 30, Angels 20 or whatever, and you get together, and then if there's a clear area right there, and then go for it. So I would say that for routine training, no more than 100 miles from the ship, unless there's a reason to be that far away. I mean, you want to save your fuel and turn that into training. But a typical hop, you launch off the CAD, go overhead, join on an assigned tanker, typically overhead, and get your gas, and then off you go. And you might find yourself 30, 40, 50 miles away from the ship. And if there's a clear area to train in and there's no one else to bother you, sure, why not?
And the S3s that would hold kind of overhead the ship, what altitudes were they typically at?
Yeah,
Were they
great
above the
question.
Marshall stack or where? Or
Daytime, Angels 6 and 7 is where the oncoming, offgoing tanker. At night, typically Angels 6 or 7, and you'll be assigned a tanker there. And then sometimes you might be with mission fuel, maybe you're assigned a radial DME, or you go down to the S3 radio. Hey, where are you guys going to be at? We're going to be here. Can we meet here? Is that good with you? And if they say sure or no, we can't because of this, and you work it out.
So is it possible? One of the big questions that we've had was, is this campaign multiplayer? And so is there a way to do multiplayer campaigns? I know that especially in a group like this, that's the sort of thing that would be like liquid gold.
For the time being, unfortunately, no. There's no way to, I mean, from my point of view as a campaign creator, it has to be a DLC. And then if it's a DLC, it has some just copyright protection, whatever, that makes it impossible to play it in multiplayer. Although, having said that, someone found a way to do it. I mean, if everyone had bought the campaign, it's possible to play it. But the main issue here is that DCS, when it comes to more sophisticated missions, it's very player-centric. So lots of triggers, cockpit situation, I mean, cockpit indicators, cockpit triggers, whatever, are only for the player. They won't work for client. So it limits a lot of what you can do, because for a client, you can do much less than for a player aircraft in a way. So the multiplayer campaigns will be much more toned down, let's say. So you won't have any, I mean, lots of situations are impossible to read what just happened, because you only can get triggers or flags or whatever out of the player aircraft, not the client aircraft. So that's the downside of the whole thing. But at the moment, even the multi-crew campaigns are not possible, which is a bummer, because that looks like a natural thing to have.
Mm. Thank you.
I'll ask the group this question that I ask myself. A single player campaign like the Raven series of campaigns, that is, I imagine, I'm answering my own question here, but I imagine that just playing that as an individual it's going to make you better for when you're flying a multiplayer.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think anytime, I'm sure it's a lot like real life. Anytime you spend, in the sim, you're going to get better. And I think the good thing what the campaign does is it kind of forces you into some situations that maybe you wouldn't put yourself in multiplayer, where loadouts are preset. So if you get really good at hitting stuff with JDAMs, and all of a sudden now you've got to use a laser Maverick, well, you better have that in your back pocket to be able to do that. So I think getting out of your comfort zone a little bit in some of those campaigns, single player is really good. I think the biggest challenge, like for me, coming from, because I am basically, I'll do these campaigns when they come out, but for the most part, I'm multiplayer only. So just the comms that we're used to back and forth between, flight lead and wingman, and kind of losing some of that in the single player is tough, because I know like some of these big packages where everybody's rendezvousing at a certain point, and there's 10 or 12 jets, and trying to figure out who's your flight lead and who you're supposed to rendezvous on, where if you can ask that guy questions and get answers back, makes it a lot easier. So the challenge for me was more in that procedural kind of stuff, more so than the actual combat or flying. Was just, okay, hey, who am I supposed to be following at this point? So I know just the way DCS goes, there's just really no way around that. But it definitely makes me appreciate, flying with another human that can answer questions and stuff back and forth. So
yeah, I absolutely enjoy flying, the single player campaigns too, and do, I think, learn a lot. Even just things like the briefing formats, what you might see on the monitor, and what the briefer is telling you, and the procedures that are being used, I think are really useful for me.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's funny. Some people criticize. There are a few things that were criticized, but the briefings, because they were not understandable, they were too complicated for some people. But then again, I mean, some people generally criticize Raven 1 because it wasn't for them. It was way too complicated. But I think there's a minority of DCS players. Most of them will appreciate that kind of complication, let's say.
Well, if it's realistic and it takes us outside of our comfort zone and forces us to learn something that is more realistic, then hey, great, let's do it.
yeah, for me, sometimes there's not enough brief. Like sometimes I'll get it after reading through the thing a couple of times and looking over the knee board, you still get in the air and you're like, man, I'm really not 100% sure what I'm supposed to be doing. So, obviously you can't have a 2-hour brief for a 2-hour mission, but it is a lot to digest. But with as complicated and coordinated as the missions are, like you would be lost without it. So like I really appreciate that, and appreciate the knee boards, especially being able to reference that material while you're in the air is huge. That's something we try to do a lot with our group, is custom knee boards for particular missions with waypoints and flight plans and DMPIs and all that kind of good stuff.
And I appreciate too just the voice comms and the immersion of that, and having I guess the voice actors in there to add to the experience. Thinking about the yacht rescue mission, and having the conversations with the woman on the yacht, and telling her to calm down. Yeah, might not have worked in real life, but it added to the mission.
Yeah, I think that's a big testament to Belgiot, who did a great work as Flip, and he recorded lots of lines, and he did them a few takes, and he was a perfectionist, so he would record something, sentence, no, I don't like it, I'll do it again. But then I don't know, we had around 100 voice actors, but everyone, there's not a single professional voice actor there. Everyone is from the community, and it's just people that want to chime in and help. And this is something I love about DCS. It's just
and that was kind of cool too, because you'd be listening and you think, wait, I recognize that voice. I've heard that on YouTube before.
Yeah, that too. We took lots of YouTubers that I like. Ralphie do Saint and Tricker and Spudnucker and some other guys. It was good fun with them.
So kind of a follow-on question to that, the lady on the yacht, was that inspired by some real life scenario, Kevin, that you heard of, or was that just something you guys came up with?
I think, Beatty, I think this was your idea, because so Flip is on the beach and at Akrotiri, so he takes off, just kind of a routine flight back to the ship, take off, dump, trap. But then this, you gotta make it exciting, and so I think Baltic Dragon came up with it, and so the idea came to me, oh yeah, awesome. So wrote the script that Jello and I sent, and we chop it, as we say, and so Jello and I agreed, we sent it to Baltic Dragon, and then he can add and subtract as required, and add lines of voice as required. So again, BD script.
Yeah, I think it was just I didn't want to do a boring hop. I wanted something to happen, but not a kinetic thing. So that just came as an idea. It was funny because I had to do a lot of research about what could happen. Okay, if you have a stroke, what are the symptoms and what do you do? And then the whole, like, I actually consulted with a British guy who was the paramedic in the paratroopers somewhere. So he gave me a lot of good information. And it's also a beautiful thing about the community. You can find people with all professions and all knowledge that you need. You just need to know whom to ask and get a lot of realistic input from them. Oh, by the way, speaking of voiceovers, if you guys are would be happy to contribute a little with the Combat Wingman with a new campaign, it would be great to have you on board with some lines and some roles.
Sure, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like fun.
Regarding Combat Wingman, the hops that we're putting together, training hops, obviously, the kind of stuff that you might do in the fleet replacement squadron. Certainly, as a nugget, Combat Wingman training, coming to a squadron, we're gonna crawl, walk, run, and so no more than 4 airplanes in any of these missions in Combat Wingman, and we'll do day-night tanking, day-night bombing. We'll go to the ship, low levels, and it's kind of basic stuff. Now, I enjoyed flying these basic missions throughout my career, and you see how can I get a better hit today? Can I hit the timing better today? You're always doing that. And even pro basketball players do warm-up drills, layup drills, and it's all part of it. So that is our goal for Combat Wing.
One thing that's different for the Combat Wing, sorry, just to chime in, is I know if you've flown the Iron Flag, that's an A-10, so I don't know if you fly it a lot, but there you have a lot of comms back and forth between the instructor and player, which is not really realistic. You would not have that in real life. You would just learn all that on the ground, whatever. And here we're thinking, okay, how to make it realistic, but still get the player all the information he needs to get better. And then when we were talking, Jill said, well, I was talking to myself a lot in the cockpit, like almost all the time. So what we want to include is a player talking to himself. Okay, now I have to do this, turn this on, turn this on, turn this off. And that way, get the player all the information how to basically learn stuff without compromising on realism.
And then Jello asked me, how about you, Hozer? Did you talk to yourself? Yeah. so yeah, we're now writing those scripts, thinking about, all right, let's turn this knob on or whatever, and think about, okay, now I need to be on the lead's right wing or things like that.
Yeah, Iron Flag
That sounds
was a
awesome.
fantastic training campaign for the A-10.
What was that, Craig?
I said Iron Flag was a fantastic training campaign for the A-10.
Yeah, thank you. We're just trying to work on the second part, but it's kind of funny, but it took us 5 years to do the first part, because when we were, my friend Doughboy, he's writing the script, basically. He's working for the Air Force and he knows the stuff. But when we started doing that, there was Hurricane, I don't know, Michael, which one was it? But in Florida, it basically destroyed his house completely. And it took him 2 or 3 years to get back to normal life. And then when we finished campaign number 1 and we started working on number 2, he got a stroke. And now he recovered, but again, we had lost almost 2 years. Fortunately, it's all good, but it's really bad luck with that one.
What time frame do you expect that training campaign to come out? Is that a year away, 18 months? Do you have any idea?
I'd say, yeah, end of next year, probably. I need to finish the Strike Eagle stuff, the manual, which, by the way, it's around 75,000 words now, so it's also like a novel, probably. And then training missions for that. I need to finish the F-16 campaign with Rain, but I'm working in parallel on Common Wingman. As soon as I finish the F-15, I'll move on quicker on it. That's it's nice to jump between projects because I'm never bored. Enough of F-16s, I go to F-18. Enough of F-18, I go to A-10. It's good fun.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty excited to hear that. I think that could be huge for the multiplayer community because the one thing we struggle with is we get these guys that want to join that have 10 hours in DCS and can barely start the jet and take off and land. So like getting to see maybe a little bit more of the real life side, how they train. I think that could be huge for us to you know bring in some of that to our current training program and improve that.
Yeah, we're potentially looking at more missions, but shorter ones. So we're focusing more on one thing at a time or one type of a hop, and not doing 5 or 6 things in one mission, which should also be easier as a kind of entryway.
We are also looking at using the Marianas map.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and wondering, it'd be hard to do with the Super Hornets in the last book, but if there were any thoughts about building a campaign kind of based off of a scenario out there.
Maybe you're referring to Fight, and we have had discussions about declared hostile and Fight, but I think they're still in the discussion stage.
Yeah.
No, but here Marianas makes sense because it's a free campaign, a free map, which also from our point of view of selling the campaign is a win, and it's nice. I mean, the frame rates now with multi-threading are much better on Marianas, so hopefully it will be a fun, good place to do it.
We've actually used the Marianas map quite a bit for our trainings and things like that. I think it would be a good fit for sure.
And even in the sim, like Blue Water Ops kind of gets everybody a little bit more on edge than normal. So it's pretty cool to see that kind of translate to get far enough out where you can't divert.
But I think first half of the campaign, or most of it, will be from the land, from the airfield. That the carrier will come later.
I'm looking forward to scripting the shipboard hops, and we'll take off from Anderson, and we'll fly out to the ship, and we'll get our traps, and maybe we'll shut down on the ship, or maybe not, probably shut down, just to keep the mission length time down so you guys can go to dinner. But then we'll have a day CQ, night CQ. But some of my best sea stories are involve low fuel or near midair collisions, and so I'm excited about scripting those, and some of the stuff that I experienced or saw in my career, and there's always something going on, even on a routine day CQ hop. There's something to watch out for.
Well, and Saint will be back.
Oh,
Yes, Saint, the new XO that everyone's getting used to.
I know I will appreciate that campaign for sure, because as my primary playing in DCS being the Tomcat, learning the Hornet was a little bit different for me, and I didn't go through one of the CSG3 pipelines to do it, and so I was trying to kind of flip back and forth between the Chuck's guide, how exactly do I do this, and like it's asking me to do this thing, so that would be welcome.
Did you fly the Speed and Angels by Reflected?
I have not yet.
Try it. It's amazing. I'm not flying, almost I have zero experience in Tomcat. I've flew only a few missions, but he did it with Paco, and it's really out of this world. It's a great campaign.
I picked it up when they first released it, but I haven't had an opportunity to fly it yet.
Yeah, well, and I can say as a full-time DCS Hornet pilot, I have no idea how many hours I have. I probably don't want to know, but I've been flying the Hornet for over 4 years, and the campaign was challenging for me. So I mean, it's for guys that don't fly it and jump in there and can get through that, on the fly. That's pretty impressive, because it does kind of, you're using all the systems in the aircraft, and you got to know your stuff to get through those. So
the Raven one, especially Dominant Fury. I mean, that's when we finished Dominant Fury, we knew that we had topped Raven one, and then are we going to top Dominant Fury, and maybe Baltic Dragon certainly has it in him, and other developers, sure, but we now get to the point that you guys talked about earlier. Okay, how much can we take and really do? And so I think that Dominant Fury and probably Speed and Angels, those types of campaigns are going to be the pinnacle for all the new guys to strive for.
Kevin, have you?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask Kevin if he'd spent much time in DCS playing any of the stuff, or you just been more of a, liaison.
I have flown DCS rigs that my friends have, but I do not have my own. And sorry, but I've picked up a lot, obviously, in conversation with BD on what's possible in DCS, and so I think I've got a pretty good knowledge again. BD takes what Joel and I send him, and he's the Hollywood movie director. He takes a novel and then turns it into a movie and does an outstanding job. Jello, I'm sorry, not Jello, but Mooch, Ward Carroll, shipmate of mine, and so he's now starting to fly the Hornet, and I'm going to see him in a few more months, and he's got a rig in his place, and so I'll jump in there with him. Maybe some of you have seen episodes that follow Mooch, and he had Nasty Manazer, famous F-14 pilot, and got in there and flying around. VR, and I know nothing about VR. I know what it is, but Mooch tell me, man, VR is everything. You got to do it. So looking forward to that, and I'll pick up things certainly that will allow me and us to put together better campaigns for you guys.
Awesome.
If I may, I'll put a bug in your ear about a video idea. You ought to fly the first mission in Dominant Fury when you go try it at his house.
Sure. A night bingo to Akrotiri.
Well,
That'd be awesome.
That landing at Akrotiri is brutal. It or at least when I did it, I don't know if it's changed any, but it was a massive crosswind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's brutal. That's true. For all those guys that were saying that boring training hubs are boring.
Yeah, there's nothing boring about that campaign.
What I once said before, when we were talking about basically campaigns and others to replicate what we did, I think, I'll be frank here, a bit of a problem is that ED has no policy when it comes to the quality of DLC campaigns. And you can get things that are, could turn people off because they just play one mission and they have to voice to speech, like voiceovers or text to speech voiceovers. And come on, there should be some at least minimum thing that or level that should be maintained. But for the time being, there's not. So there might be people who just try to say, I'm not going to play these DLCs because it sucks. Probably all of them like that.
The ones that I've tried, really yours and Reflected, those are the ones that, and I'm sure there are a lot of other really good ones, but those, if I see a campaign come out from you guys, it's a day one purchase. It's just, I know the quality that's going into that, and I've not had a bad experience yet, really.
I appreciate it. Reflected is a great guy. We're doing a campaign now for Koa together. So actually he's doing it. I don't have time. So he's doing everything. I'm just looking what he's doing and probably will jump in at some point. But he's a great guy. And it's funny how we're both from Eastern or Central Europe. He's Hungarian and Polish. I think there should be many more good campaign creators from the US, but actually not too many. Some from Canada, I think. Settlers from Canada, but mostly it's outside. Europe is pretty strong. Guys, can you send me the invite to your Discord server?
Absolutely.
Be in touch. Also for those voiceovers we talked, if you're really up for it, it'll be great to have you on some of the missions in different roles.
For sure. Yeah, we'd jump at that chance. I'll get that to Kevin after this is over.
Okay, cool.
Data, he's on the call here. He's got the best radio voice in our group, so I nominate him for one for sure.
Been uncharacteristically quiet over there.
He hasn't started drinking yet, that's why.
Sure. Fortunately, it's water right now.
Just threw a screenshot in our chat here. I took a tag view shot of that landing at Akrotiri. You can just see how much offset there was in that thing. It was bananas. I didn't think I was going to make it.
That's awesome.
Reminds me of a real world story of an aircraft when they were landing in strong crosswind, and the flight attendants told the people to put down the shutters so they cannot see outside.
Oh no.
And someone's writing that he opened the shutter, and then there he sees the runway basically almost in front of him. And when they landed, the captain came on the voice comm and said, "Well, that's why they pay me the big bucks."
It's time to wrap it up.
I mean, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with us. It's awesome for us to get to pick your brains and kind of see what goes on behind the scenes. And we're always looking for more and better ways to make the group more immersive. And I think these conversations are probably the best thing that we do that kind of helps us do that. So we really appreciate you guys taking your time out to chat with us.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
Tex. Enjoyed it.
From my side, what I think I could do, and that might be a good idea, basically in general, to take 1 or 2 missions from Dominant Fury. But I'd like to hear from you which ones would be best, and really turn them into multiplayer and see how they work, and maybe send them to you so you can test them and see if they're okay, and if they work, we can release them for more people out there. But then when I join your server, we can have a discussion which ones you think would work best, because I'm really not a big multiplayer person, so you'd have to tell me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get busy, because when we do it right, we have between 30 and 40 hornets and 8 to 10 tomcats in the air at one time. Then probably another 6 to 8 harriers.
Impressive.
We don't hit each other.
Even more so.
Good training.
All right, guys, thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Pleasure talking to
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for talking with us.
Thanks.
So I have one final thought, and it just comes from Tex's screenshot there. Is there any way to look at like some sort of attack view integration to debrief the missions on the campaign? I mean, obviously the user could do that, but is there a way to integrate that into the campaign experience for the player?
I don't think so. I haven't used Tag View that much, but as far as I know, there's no way to do it like as a obligatory thing or part of the debriefing. Debriefings in DCS are basically very bad, because we just had lots of this text of what happened, who shot a single bullet where, and then there's almost no control about the debriefing. I'm trying to work on some system when I'm using flags and then put different debriefing texts, so it's very modular, but I'm just playing with it, and it's super complicated. I'm not really sure if it's worth the effort to have it actually. And we had a discussion with Kevin, and that's one of the main things in DCS, that we cannot debrief properly, and that's a big hindrance for the combat wingman.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I mean, you all know how important debriefs are, and certainly in military aviation. And so we're having those discussions. We're trying. We're thinking about it. You know, how to incorporate anything along the lines of a debrief. But gentlemen, thank you so much. It's great to be with you today. Thanks to those of you who have played our campaigns, and those of you who have read my books. If you're inclined and want to leave an Amazon review, the most helpful thing, and some of you have, and really appreciate that. In 1 month, it's the Battle of Midway anniversary. So for those of you that have not read the Silver Waterfall, there's still time, and I think you'll enjoy it and learn a lot more about that battle. But yeah, great being with you. And Chris, thanks for hosting us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.